vamos a comenzar. Así que, como les digo, pues quien va a hacer la introducción va a ser Felipe Arroyave, quien es nuestro presidente. Así que, pues, sin más, adelante.
Bueno, muy buenas noches, Eve. Qué bueno tenerte acá en América Latina de nuevo. Para mí es un orgullo tenerte dando conferencias y dictando este webinar a toda América Latina. Thank you so much for being here, Eve. It's a pleasure to have you here speaking to Latin America. I know that it's late in the Netherlands, but thank you so much for joining. Con nosotros el día de hoy tenemos a Eve van der Werf, un investigador, escritor de varios libros. Muchos de ustedes lo conocen como el escritor del libro de lentes esclerales, el cual fue un hit a nivel mundial. Es un doctor en optometría, tiene un doctorado, es fellow de la Sociedad Americana de Optometría, es un fellow de IACL también, es un fellow del British Contact Lens Association, es un fellow de la Scleral Lens Society también de Norteamérica, y como les digo, es un investigador, un gran amigo, y en el día de hoy, antes de comenzar este webinar, me estaba diciendo que esta es su audiencia favorita en todo el mundo. Ama explicarle a los latinos, ama dar conferencias a los latinoamericanos, así que nos va a deleitar el día de hoy con una excelente conferencia sobre el control y el manejo de la miopía. Algo totalmente nuevo, algo que acaba de salir con varias investigaciones, y con ustedes, Eve van der Werf. Eve, it's a pleasure having you here.
Felipe, thank you for putting up this webinar, especially the timing is perfect for me, as you can imagine. But I'm so happy to speak to my favorite audience. And I'm sorry, I don't want to sound too cheesy in a way, but it really is. South America has stole my heart, and it's always such a pleasure talking to anywhere in your region. Well, right now we have to do it remote. I'm in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And what I want to do with you today is I want to talk to you about my favorite topic. And we're in for a really exciting treat here today, because I think we're going beyond the standard contact lens practice and eye care clinic. We're going to take a look at the future of the eye care field here together. So I want to get at eye level with each and every one of you, quite literally, because what I want to do is look at the latest in our field, so getting at eye level, but at an elevation level. So we're going to take a look at differences in height when it comes to ocular shape, and then I want to sort of move to the front side of the eye and look at the aberrations and the optics. So a lot of work to do, so let's get started. Before I get started, these are my disclosures. I do work with several industry partners like Spectrum International, of course, always with pleasure, but I'm not on anyone's payroll, so I can say whatever I want, and I'm always trying to be objective. Now, I want to look at the state of the art of myopia management per se when it comes to especially the soft lens options. But I want to take a broader view, like I said. I wanted to show you this paper that just came out in one of our main journals, Optometry and Vision Science, which is the American Academy of Optometry. The fellowship was just announced. And a sidestep, but what it does, it looks at OCT images of the eye, and every practice that has an OCT have a database of a couple of hundred or maybe 1,000 patients. And then if you have a new patient that comes in, it looks at that eye and compares it to that database. But wouldn't it be nice to have a huge, large database with hundreds of thousands of eyes? Well, that is what this paper is about. It's trying to combine databases of different eyes. And then if someone walks in within milliseconds, that instrument can tell us whether we have a normal eye or not. And why am I bringing this up? Because it has nothing to do with the anterior surface. I'm bringing this up because I think this is the way we should go in the future. And that is also going to be true. And it's also already happening with corneal topography. Look, for instance, at keratoconus detection. You get the red or the green indices. We are going to see that with myopia management. If you have a kid of a certain age, you can sort of look at the benchmark of age-related kids and see where is this kid and is that normal or not. And we are going to see a big difference when it comes to contact lens fitting as well, with companies having databases of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of lenses. They know exactly what lens is best for what eye. So, like I said, we're going to take a look into the future of our industry and our field, and we're going to particularly talk about myopia management. Like I said at the beginning, everything in the contact lens field, more and more so, is in microns of elevations. And we've learned that. Some of you may know me from the scleral lens guide. We know this from scleral lens fitting, right? Everything is in height. We have the ocular surface defined in height. We have the trial lenses now in often in increments in sagittal height. The clearance or the fluid reservoir thickness is 200 or 300 microns. The amounts of sinking, etc., etc. Everything is in elevation, and ortho-K as well. What you're doing in ortho-K, you're changing the epithelium, which is 50 microns, 50, and you're changing that by maybe 10 or 20 microns. It's elevation. When do you go from a spherical lens to a toric lens, whether it's ortho-K or a corneal lens? It depends on the amount of elevation on the ocular surface. I can go on for hours about this, and maybe we can do this at some future event, Felipe. But right now, again, I want to switch to myopia. And we know that, again, it's all in metrics, maybe not in microns, but in millimeters. We know what the normal eye looks like. The normal eye is 23.5 millimeters. And we know if that extends, that has huge risk, basically on retinopathy on the back side of the eye. So we want to make sure that eye at least stays within 26 millimeters. And any progression depends a little bit on the age. I'm not going to get into detail too much. I understand somebody else will get into that in this series later this fall. But typically in the range of 100 micron increment. Anything below that we could consider normal. Anything beyond that we would consider abnormal or something we want to reduce. Now, that is where we are. And again, even that metric is in microns now. So when we look at the options for myopia management, I don't have to tell you there are several options, including pharmaceutical ones, glasses. We're obviously going to focus on the contact lens options and then specifically the soft one. So what I want to do is I want to take you through the back side of the lens first, and then come to the front side of the lens. And then at the end of the presentation, you will see that it will all come together, because you cannot do one without the other. Now, some of you may have seen me in the past. I have a couple of passions, and one is scleral lenses. Two is certainly everything related to corneal topography and everything. And then third is myopia management. But the passion that I'm really lately interested in is sagittal height and soft lens fitting, because that is something we haven't dig into. Now, I've worked with people like Jason Jedlicka from Indiana, and what we've done is combining the knowledge we have about scleral lenses, about corneal topography, and apply that to the soft lens fitting. And I will give you the short version of those talks, because actually each of one is an hour kind of education. But the first thing I want to show you is that if you only do central case with a keratometer, you only measure about 3 millimeters on that ocular surface, which is about 8 square millimeters. Now, obviously, a soft lens is much bigger. We're getting into the hundreds, 150 square millimeters. So, lesson learned, you cannot define the ocular surface for fitting a soft lens by using only keratometry. So, we need new technology. So, literally, let's bring some new technology to the table. Well, if you use any of the instruments out there, and again, I don't want to get into details too much, but there are special topographers that can measure ocular shape beyond the limbus, and there are corneal topographers that can predict what the overall 15 millimeter diameter ocular surface will look like. Obviously, if you want to fit a soft lens, you need information over about 15 millimeters, because that is our workbench. The lens is maybe 14.2. You have about maybe 0.2 millimeter on each side of movement, so that will bring us to 15 millimeter workbench. Now, again, I'll give you the summary, but if you plot all the normal eyes that we've measured with this instrument, these are 200 eyes with the eye surface profiler, then you get a bell curve. We know roughly what the average eye is. We also know what one standard deviation from that normal is, which would mean about 86% of all eyes. So the bulk of the eyes in a normal practice would fit that top of the bell curve, which would be somewhere between 3,000, let's say 3,500 and 4,000 microns. If your eye is in that category, you know you're dealing with a normal eye. If it's not, you may have to go to one of these out of standard lenses to fit those out of standard eyes. I won't get into that right now, but some of you may have heard me talk about this in previous years. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Basically, it comes down to this. In our practices, we want to find normal eyes, and I've defined that as, a little bit of a joke, as Nemos, finding Nemos, normal eyes measured ocular surface. It's a bit of a joke, but it's really important to do this, because if you know you have a normal eye, you know you can use the standard lenses that we have, and that would be the tools we use. Now, that was kind of a long introduction into this particular piece of research we did, and we did that at the University of Salento in Italy with Giancarlo Montani. That's about as Italian name as you can find, I think. A fantastic guy who did all these work. And what we did is we took all the lenses right now that we think are available for myopia control, whether it's on label or off label, but they're used for that purpose. And we looked at their sagittal height, the lens shape, and we looked at their optical profile. So the rest of the lecture will be about those 8 lenses that we measured. And the first thing I wanted to show you, sticking with the lens shape, is look at the yellow arrows right up there. You see that there are differences in shape on the posterior surface between a MiSight, for instance, or a 1-day pure, or and any of the other lenses that are available. So what I'm trying to say is that if you're fitting a soft lens and you don't really get the right lens fit, there are other options in terms of fit. If you're interested in this topic, I don't know if you can scan this from behind your computer, or I can provide Felipe with the link, but we have all the sagittal heights of all the lenses, not just multifocals for myopia, but spherical ones, toric ones. We have them on the Pacific University website, and that QR code will take you there directly if you wish. Okay, now I'll promise you I will come back to that later. But now I want to switch to the front side of the eye, again, looking at the multifocal lenses for myopia management. And that brings me to this particular slide. And this is about the busiest slide I ever had. And well, Felipe knows me a little bit. We go back a long time. We've had some great trips together, and he's done a lot of fantastic translation. He's my favorite translator. I'm not just saying that, Felipe, but you're doing a good job with that. I wouldn't always admit it when we're together, but here you go. What I was trying to say is he also knows that I don't like busy slides. I hate busy slides. It gets me confused. So against my normal wishes, I'm showing you this because these are all the lenses we think are out there used for myopia management. And I'm gonna sort of cut it down in different parts again to understand where we are. I think the biggest decision we can make is whether we're going to use a daily disposable, a monthly, or anything beyond that, quarterly replacement or even longer. Now, the biggest thing we have to deal with in kids, of course, is hygiene. And in that particular part, I think daily disposables can be a huge help. Now, the most known, famous, if you want, example is probably the MiSight, and you can see here the optical profile of that particular lens. And you can see the rings, and on top right there, you can see the big monuments of, like a monument value in the US, of mountains of plus as compared to the distance vision, which is typically concentrated in the center and in the second or third ring. They have a relative plus power of +2. Now, why is this the most famous? Most probably because it has a long track record of over 6 years of data and very well documented. So good papers in the international peer-reviewed journals that also ophthalmologists read, and they say, okay, here's something that we can work with. So we've seen that. They've reported numbers of 50% reduction. Now, I want to stop here for a second and talk to you about using percentages in our practices, and also when we talk about this at conferences. But if you are in a practice, especially with a parent and a kid, you have to be extremely careful with using percentages. Why? Well, because what is reported in these studies is exactly that. It is what they find in a controlled setting, on average, specifically during the period of that study. So what I'm trying to say is that a -6 will not become a -3. It's not that 50%. Typically, when you start myopia, they're already -2 maybe, and they're already, I would say, 12. Well, then your period where you can still do something is limited. And typically, we can get up to 1 or 1.5 diopter maximum treatment effect on average. So that is the other thing. That kid in your chair right now, he could be a good acceptance of that therapy or a bad one, but you can never promise it. So be very, typically it's better not to use that number, because even if you try to explain what I just did, all the parents heard is 50%, 50%. So my minus 10 will be a minus 5. No, it doesn't work that way. Your minus 10 at best on average will be an 8.5. So that is something to keep in mind. Now let's go back to our overview. So this is daily disposable number 1. It's also a molded lens, so molding system. I'll come back to that in a little bit, why that is important. There's a couple of variables where we need to take a look at, and one is whether it's spherical or toric, and the other one is this one, the way the lens is manufactured. But nice lens, as you can see, it has a completely different profile. I'll come back to that in a little bit. The plus here is +3. So, and the reports we're getting, it may not be as published in journals as high rated as some of the my side lenses, but generally the outcome is really good. The Seed One Day Pure lens is pretty much the same lens design. It's also a daily disposable, but it's not marketed for myopia management, so please get that in mind. But I know some people are using that. It's the Brian Holden design EDOF patents, where also Mark Enevy works with. So there's not a lot of difference between those lenses, and we're going to compare all these lenses later. But again, it's a daily disposable, but not marketed for myopia management. Now, I was looking at all these profiles here at this very desk, and my cat jumped on my desk, and I was looking at the ears, and I was like, that is exactly the profile we're looking at. Later, I found out that the name for these optics is catenary optics. I'm not joking you. This is exactly what happened. So, but what I'm trying to say is that the one pure EDOF and the natural view, or it's called Bloom Day here in the Netherlands or in Europe, they are similar. I wouldn't say they're exactly the same, but they're similar. So I want you to keep that in mind as we go along and look at all the other profiles. So the beauty about daily disposables is the hygiene effect. The kids don't have to clean it. They don't have to store it. They don't even need a case. There's one little caveat, and that is that these lenses are not available in a toric lens design. And we know from research, and I have a newsletter, maybe Felipe can send that link, netherlands.com. I have two actually. One is on rigid lenses, it comes out every month, and one is on soft lenses, where I talk about a lot of things, including myopia management. And I regularly report in that newsletter on the importance of correcting the astigmatism in myopia management, because we know that if you correct that, the efficacy goes up. So if you have 0.75 diopter or SIL or higher in your kit, you can't get away with a spherical lens. So then you would have to go to a toric one. Now, there are a few, but now we're in the monthly department. And I'm bringing up the Mark Enevy lenses because they have a specific myopia management over there, the blue one, myopia management lens. It does come in a toric version now. And well, as you can see, it's that same catenary optics. They're all similar in nature with that literal cat design. I've talked to the manufacturer a couple of times, and what they tell me is they also have a lens for presbyopia, and that has different ad values. Now, we know from research that the higher the ad, the more effective the system is. The Blink study, I'll show you in a little bit, showed that the more plus, the better. But in this case, you got to be careful, because only the middle addition of 1.5 plus 1.5, that one represents the myopia lens that we can use in our practices. The others apparently have a different profile or a different design, but apparently these two lenses are similar. Now, other options in the same arena, monthly lenses, toric, is good old center distance multifocal lenses. This is the standard, the most standard presbyopia multifocal lens that we have in our arsenal of lenses. So for instance, CooperVision has the ProClear. They have a center distance and a center near. So make sure you pick the center distant one for myopia management, because as far as we know right now, center distance is the best option. This is the Biofinity from the same company. And with this particular lens, they did the Blink study from Jeff Wallin. I'm sure maybe you saw him at class last year. And what he was explaining, that they compared a +2.5 with a +1.5 diopter, and the 2.5 diopter one was more effective. So this is where the information comes from. The more plus, probably the better it is. Now, these last two lenses were molded. I explained to you that some of these other lenses, like the Mark Enerview one, and the ones like the ones I'm showing you here too, they are late cut lenses. So they're produced like they were rigid lenses on a lathe. You just give them the prescription. The beauty is you can make any lens you want. So with all of these lenses they have at Mark NFV, you can go to -23 if you wanted to. I think maybe I'm saying something wrong, Felipe, but please correct me then. But you can get any prescription, any cylinder, any axis. So that gives you a lot of freedom. The downside of late cut is it's really hard to make a daily disposable out of it, because that's virtually impossible. And they may be a tad thicker, but not too much. Since we were talking about microns earlier in this presentation, I can share that with you. A typical standard daily disposable molded lens may be in the 80 micron range, 80. In a typical late cut lens, maybe 120 microns or something. I doubt if the patient feels it, but that is something that we know with these new lenses. And that also is true for all the quarterly lenses that are in the next category. If for some reason you can't get away with these monthly, if you can get away with a monthly lens, I would always try that first on a kid. But then if your prescription for some reason gets out of line, you would have to go to these quarterly lenses. There are some in the US and some differences in Europe. These are the ones from the US, just to name a few. The beauty with some of them, like these ones, are that you can actually change the size of the optical zone. So that will give you even more freedom, actually. But other than that, and price maybe, it doesn't give you much extra to go to a quarterly lens as opposed to a monthly lens. There's one new kit on the block that I want to share with you, and that is not available in Europe yet. I know it's available first in Canada, then US, and now I think it's becoming available in Australia too. And that is the Ability from Johnson & Johnson. It was introduced last year here in Rotterdam at the International Myopia Conference by Noah Brennan. You can see him right there and that picture I took. It's a molded lens. It's a daily disposable. It's not toric. But look at that optical profile. It's completely different than any of the other profiles that we showed. I'm not going to tell you what it resembled me of when I first saw this one, but it's very different than the CAT designs. So let me try to summarize things here. From an educational point of view, we looked at all these profiles and we thought, what can we do to better understand it? Again, my goal in life in general and in my lectures is to bring it down to small chunks of information that we can easily or more easily understand. And I think in essence, there are 4 different profiles. We have the ring design, it's good on my side. We have the center distance, the classical center distance multifocal lens, like the Biofinity, the ProClear, or the BYO. And then we have a range of EDOF designs, the Milo, the Bloom, the Natural View, the Seed, and then there's the new one, the Ability. Now, obviously, the very weird thing about the Ability is that it has that small 1 millimeter plus a lot, plus 7, plus 8 in the center, which is opposite of what we knew so far. That ties in with the latest and newest knowledge that we have about understanding myopia management. At first, we thought everything happened in the periphery. And I can talk about, maybe if you like, in the discussion a little bit later, if we have time, Felipe. But it is not just happening in the periphery. In fact, I think it's having the bulk of what's happening is happening somewhere else. And that could well be the very center part of not just the macula, not just the fovea, but the foveola, which is the very small 300, 350 micron ring in the center of the eye. That brings me to this point. So when we talk about correcting optics and correcting aberrations, because that's what we do with myopia management, and we're not just correcting it, we're actually applying optics and aberrations in a controlled way, like with Ortho-K. Ortho-K is really knowing what the ocular surface exactly looks like, and then trying to change that deliberately to what we want it to be. And that's the same thing with optics on the front. We first want to correct it as much as possible, but with myopia management, we want to actually increase some of that optics, plus or minus, in some parts, and aberrations on that eye. So that makes this a really, really interesting topic to talk about, to think about, but we're not there yet. It's a big puzzle that we're solving right now. Now, like I said in the beginning, it all ties in together. Now, let's say you have the black curve here is the cornea, and you have the blue curve, a contact lens. You're going to put that blue curve, the lens, on the eye. That lens is going to flex. Well, that's going to flex by probably 200 or 200 microns. Every soft lens you'll ever fit that is successful will be steeper than the ocular surface. Otherwise, you have no grip, and the lens moves too much, decenters, blah, blah, blah. But the amount of flexure, that we don't know exactly, because we don't measure the ocular surface typically. Now, for a standard lens, a standard -2 myope, nobody's going to notice that, because every change will be less than a quarter of a diopter typically. But when it becomes Champions League level, then it becomes a different story. Multifocals, myopia lenses, wavefront correction. Now, all of a sudden, it really matters how much that lens is going to flex on the eye, or you will influence the optics. So we can measure the optics of the lens like I just showed you, but that is all on a workbench in water, not on the eye. And that's why I think it's so important that we combine fitting the soft lens and knowing what the ocular surface is, and then adding the optics on the front. And actually, there's one university in Liverpool in the UK that is working with that. If you put that blue soft contact lens on the eye, it's going to flex. And what does that mean to the power? They even have a term for that, the EPC, the effective power change of that lens on the ocular surface. So really cool stuff. So in let me try to summarize this. I think the fitting of a soft lenses, we're not fitting soft lenses anymore, right? But we should be looking at that because centration is extremely important. If a myopia management lens or a multifocal lens for presbyopia, if that lens decenters, then your optics are off and it's not going to be as effective. So you have to look at the lens fits. Also, by the way, we don't want all these kids to drop out of lens wear. I think the most important thing when it comes to myopia management is the compliance of the kid with the lens. And with compliance, I don't mean how well they clean the lens. It's the compliance with the therapy. You want them to wear whatever intervention every day, always. And that is one thing that contact lenses had as an advantage over glasses, because glasses, as soon as you start playing soccer, throw off the lenses. If you go swimming, throw off the lenses. If you take a bath, throw off the glasses, I mean. With lenses, well, maybe apart from the showering, but you have to keep them in, especially with Ortho K. You can't even take that out. So that is a big plus. But we don't want the kids to drop out with the soft lenses. So also in that regard, we want them to be comfortable with their lens. And then there's this whole flexure control thing that I just talked about. So understanding the shape of the eye, aligning the lens better with the ocular surface to where we want it is totally beneficial for the optical outcome on the front side of that lens for vision. And of course, the topic we've been talking about for the last, 25 minutes, it's the control of the optics in terms of myopia management. So in English, they have this saying, if you want to understand everything from A to Z, you really understand what you're talking about. Well, in this particular talk, I covered everything from H to Z, almost the same. The H standing for height or elevation, shape, fit, to Z, and Z is Zernike polynomials. And if you're into the field of higher order aberrations of optics, you will get across that term of Zernike. Who is Zernike? Well, right there, Fritz Zernike. He is the inventor of the mathematical model for describing really complex shapes. So after the lower order aberrations, the sphere and the sill, you have the higher order aberrations, the coma and spherical aberration and more complex ones. He was the one who described it. And you know what? And I just wanted to throw that in. He's a Dutch guy, Fritz Zernike. He actually, well, if you could look out of my window, I'm on the top of a building, and you can look that way, a bike ride of maybe 10 minutes. Felipe and I had dinner, was it this year or last year, Felipe? Literally next to the house where he was born. And so we have to honor Fritz Zernike and think about the optics. And we have to honor that guy, Otto Wichterle. You may have recognized him. He's the inventor of the soft lens himself from Prague in Czechoslovakia. Can't take any Dutch credits on that part, but when he invented the soft lens, and you can look at his first trial set of such soft lenses that he had the lenses ranked and marked in sagittal height. So his whole purpose was fitting lenses based on sag, and combining these two, well, grandmasters in our field. If we could do that, then I think we're ready for the next step in our industry. And that's where I think let's get comfortable customizing, because I think the best lens in the future will be an individual made lens. Right now, we'll deal with whatever we have, but if you could measure the eye in shape, if you could measure the eye in optics, combine that, and either you have it on the shelf or you could order that custom made, then you have the best lens for that patient. So with that, Felipe, I want to turn it back to you. And if there's any questions, I think we're going to discuss them now. If there's any questions in the future, or if you're afraid to ask them, my email address is there. Feel free to shoot me an email.
Well, thank you so much, Ave. So beautiful points you touched today. Yes, I remember going to dinner with you and seeing his house. Remember that we had dinner and then you showed it to me. So thank you for doing that. That was amazing. Very important point also that I got from this conference is that I'm the best translator you've ever worked with. So thank you.
Can we cut that piece out? Oh, it's live. We can't, yeah.
It's recording, my friend. It's already recorded. So I'm going to switch into Spanish. Para las personas que quieran hacer preguntas, les recuerdo que las preguntas están al lado derecho del módulo de preguntas y respuestas. So they're going to ask multiple questions. We're going to answer them as we go. But I do want to ask you 3 questions, mainly about myopia management and profile. So let's stop right now for 1 second, and then I'll ask you the questions.
I'll have a sip of water. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, Ave. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions that I got from several people here. So out of all the options that we have that you mentioned, that you have glasses, atropine, contact lenses such as ortho-K and soft lenses, what do you think is the best option for myopia management and myopia control?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We obviously have a clever audience here, Felipe. Well, the answer is surprisingly simple, maybe. We have 4 options. One is, and that is besides the whole lifestyle intervention, more outdoor, less screen time. That is separate, but that is true for everybody. You can, and that's free. So, but I think we have a very important role to provide that information. Then we have pharmaceutical interventions, which basically is atropine in different concentrations right now. Then we have optical intervention with glasses, 3 different lens designs now, optical lens designs. And then we have contact lens options, ortho-K, and soft lens. So there are 4 options. Now, if you look at the literature, Felipe, you can dig in for hours and days and weeks and find all the papers, and one is a little bit different than the other. And then you have the companies trying to add their little sauce to it and everything. In the end of the day, I truly believe right now, and I'm listening to the guru in this, and that is Jeff Wallin. He says they're not that different. Only 1% atropine or high dose atropine is maybe a little bit more effective than the rest, but that has huge side effects in terms of pupil size, light problems, you can't read. But lower dose atropine or glasses or any of the other ones, they're roughly the same. They promise the same. The thing that is most important, Felipe, is, and I think I said that during the lecture, is what they're most compliant with. What is the kid most comfortable with? If those are glasses, let's go with glasses. If the kid swims a lot, well, you can't have soft lenses, and glasses aren't great either. So maybe you could go with ortho-K or with atropine. If kids is afraid of drops, yeah, don't use atropine. If kids is afraid of contact lenses, yeah, don't use. If the parents don't have contact lenses, typically that is a discussion point. If they have lenses, that is typically a route to go. Well, I'm not the expert in the field, but I think you know what I'm getting at. Don't worry too much about the subtle differences between the different interventions as we know them right now. Of course, that can change in the future. But focus on what is best for the kid. So that is my advice in that part.
Perfect. That's a great answer. Okay, so we have a second question, and it's that, hey, you mentioned about this new lens from J&J, from Johnson & Johnson, with a big plus in the middle. How does that lens work? I mean, because we've seen all the different lenses, and this is just completely different from the other lenses that we have for myopia management. How does it work?
Yeah, I don't know. Is
Oh,
that
that's a great
sure enough?
answer.
I know we went over time a little bit, so I don't want to take too much of your time. No, well, all right. So I mentioned my newsletter. I'm going to mention it one more time. Netherlands.com. Please feel free to sign up. It's free. It comes out every month, and you can always unsubscribe if you don't like it. But in the last episode, it came out, last Monday. Oh no, a little while back. Sorry, but anyway, it came out recently, and it talked about fooling the foveola. And I already mentioned that we've always been under the impression with the brilliant work of Earl Smith, that everything in myopia is happening in the periphery. Because what he did in primates, in monkeys, he lasered the central part of the retina, and those retinas still developed into myopia. So everybody always assumed that is the mechanism for myopia. Well, it may be the mechanism for myopia development, but not for myopia control. So right now, as I see it, and this is just speculation, Felipe, but right now, the way I see it, those two are diverging. We have myopia control mechanisms, and we have a mechanism for myopia management. So we have a mechanism, for myopia development and for myopia control. And the latter, we may actually need the central retina and the very small portion of the retina. That's why there's so much plus in that center. I talked to maybe the pioneer in the field of soft lenses for myopia, and his name is Tom Aller. Maybe you should get him on this program one day, Philip. He's great. He's a practitioner. He was the first ever to describe myopia management with soft lenses. And his paradigm is, he always has been, you need any damn plus, any damn place. So for him, it wasn't about peripheral or central and I think he may have been right. We may have to go back to our drawing table and reinvent soft lenses for myopia management with the new understanding. So I say it in my newsletter, and that's the max I can say about it, because I really don't understand the whole mechanism behind it. But we may have been fooled all this time by focusing on location, central or peripheral, or even type of optical confusion, because some of the glasses that we have, they're not even optical. They work with contrast. But just by the way Tom Aller explained it to me is that if you confuse the retina, by giving him weird optics, basically, it doesn't know where to grow. Is that simple enough? So even I could understand that. So I was like, yeah, maybe that's sort of the basic and the very simplistic mechanism behind it. So just any confusion plus anywhere could do the job, including centrally. So hey, I'll keep following that. If there is any news in the literature, I will explain it and cover it in my newsletter. So yeah, if you do sign up, you'll get that in your inbox on a monthly basis.
Great, Abe. Would you mind sending me your latest letter? Because I really want to share it with everybody that is listening to this topic today. So if you can send it to me either today or tomorrow, I will share it with the entire group that is listening to us right now.
Sure thing.
Okay, so third question, and this is the last one, so I can let you go to sleep. It's 3 a.m. in Amsterdam right now. So what is the relationship that profiles and sagittal height have in myopia management?
Yeah, so the way I try to explain is that everything is coming together, Felipe. I think we haven't even touched on the most effective lens. We're just playing around with the lens that we had, the old multifocal lenses for presbyopes, and now we're putting them on myopes, young kids. The stuff I was just telling you, we don't even understand the exact mechanism behind that, so we can learn from that. And that is really my focus. I think if you could cater towards the individual needs of a patient, of a kid, then you can be really effective. So that means getting the right shape. Because again, if your lens has to flex on the eye more than the standard eye does, then that optics is going to change. In other words, you need to be in control of the amount of flexure. Now, if you measure the ocular surface and you know your lens, you know exactly the difference and you are in control over what's happening. But right now, the amount of flexion could be 100 microns or it could be 500 microns. So you don't know how that optics is going to change. And the second thing, Felipe, if you don't have the right lens design on the back surface, the lens is going to decenter. And if your optics is off, then the lens is not going to be as effective. So, and then on the front surface, we can apply much better optics than we do today if we measure the individual optics. So a lot of the myopia lenses, the new ones, are looking into, for instance, spherical aberration. Now, you can change the amount of spherical aberration in the lens. You can add spherical aberration to create that confusion. But some already have spherical aberration. And if you're going to add more, they don't see very well. Some of them have none, or they have positive spherical aberration. For them, you want to add more spherical aberration. So you see where I'm getting at? If you could individualize that and combine that with the back surface, and maybe it's a little bit holistic here, but I think there's a bright future for us, and maybe that's a nice way to end the talk. I truly believe we're in the right direction, but there's more to come.
Great. Ave, thank you so much for this wonderful hour that you spent with us. Have a wonderful morning.
Thank you.
Please say hi to your family for me, and I'll see you at the GCLS. And please share that newsletter with us so that I can continue your education to the world. Okay. Great.
Well, guys, keep up the great work you're doing in Latin America, and hope to be back soon live somewhere in the future.
I hope to have you here in Latin America in 2024, Ave. Thank you so much, my dear brother. You take care. Thank you so much for your knowledge. Appreciate it.
Bueno, buenísima charla. Excelente presentación por el afamado Eve van der Werp. Gracias a Felipe también por su compañía en esta presentación. Por favor, si tienen más preguntas, el correo de Eve van der Werp lo pusimos en el chat. Pueden hacer llegar sus preguntas a él directamente. Él con gusto va a estar contestando las preguntas. Pues en nombre de Spectrum International, les agradecemos mucho por estar en este módulo 9. Ha sido una charla muy entretenida y enriquecedora. La verdad es que nos encanta compartir conocimiento con ustedes y traer a los mejores ponentes para que les brinden su conocimiento. De parte de todo Spectrum, les agradecemos su atención y nos estaríamos viendo próximamente en otro módulo, en el módulo 10. Si mal no estoy, es la siguiente semana. Santiago, ¿me puedes confirmar?
Sí, correcto, Rich, es con Sabrina Lara de Argentina, para que estén muy pendientes a nuestras redes sociales. Va a ser nuestro último módulo de los tenores de la contactología para que nos puedan acompañar.
Así que pues sin más, les agradecemos mucho la atención en esta presentación, les agradecemos su tiempo, como siempre es un gusto y es muy rico tenerlos por acá, compartir con ustedes. Pasen una excelente noche y pues nada, verlos la otra semana será un placer. Hasta luego. Gracias.